Thank you, Max. Thank you very much for the invitation to be here. And I wish you good luck to the artificial intelligence. I don't know if you have quoted that, but a couple of days ago, one country in Europe decided to have one minister who is an artificial intelligence. It's Albania, who has appointed a minister named Diela, who is an artificial intelligence for covering the public market, because the likelihood to be corrupted is much lower than a human, which is a very surprising way of thinking. Anyway, in our case, we have no minister at all anymore, so... Okay, but this was not the point for today. We are going to talk about insurance, but I'm going to give a completely different perspective. And before, if Mark, you allow me, I'll just go a little bit away from agroecology and crop protection. If you make the parallel between crop protection and car driving, we are trying to get insurance for both sides. If you have a car, if you are allowed to get an insurance and to be reimbursed if you have a problem, if you have a driving license, if your car is in a good health and good shape, and it has to be controlled, and you are not allowed, or you are not going to be refunded if you are drunk. And to be drunk means that you are not taking the right decision at the right time. And I invite you to check whether these three conditions are respected and fulfilled when you try to cover an insurance for crop protection, not pesticide reduction, but crop protection. Do we have a spraying license? In France, we say we have a certificato, but if you made a comparison with a driving license, it's nothing comparable. Are the fields in good shape? Nobody's paying any attention to that. Being drunk or not, this is not the question, of course. But are we able to make the right decision at any time when we go to a field and decide to protect it? And I think this could be a part of the question that you could discuss along these 2 days. After the very good introduction by Mark, and congratulations for the project you ran, because it was really an outstanding project and very, very challenging, because at the beginning no one was very, at least on the funding side, very, very excited about that. But you were very good in getting this being funded, and you made a great job. So I'm going to talk about the agroecology transition, but more on the crop protection side. What can be different from what it is today? Crop protection is compulsory, no doubt about that. You have seen the figure from Mark on wine. Here is on wheat. And what you see from that is you cannot predict the intensity from 1 year, what is going to come next. It is nothing comparable among regions, and 1 year does not give you information to anything. So if you have no driving license, if you do not know the state of your environment, if you are not making the right decision, the only thing you can do is you spray every morning. Another point, which was a paper quite surprising, mainly coming from modeling, working with several crops. So when you have model, you can always challenge the model. But they analyzed what were the consequences in terms of yield of reducing the pesticide, reducing the nitrogen fertilization. And they show that, je sais pas si ça marche, là. Yeah. When you are going to a reduction of the pesticide use, what they call pesticide shock, you have a slight decrease, which is not very strong. When you have a fertilizer shock, it's much stronger. What is even worse is that the combination of both is very important. And this is something we tend completely to underestimate. We talk about pesticide on one side, we talk about fertilization on the other side. We never combine these two. Pesticide is today, crop protection, sorry, is today massively achieved through pesticide use. You all know these figures, and this is the use in Europe, and this is the use in France, and the objective of the Sustainable Use Directive implemented in Europe in 2009 was to reduce the use and impact of pesticide by 50%. In France, we say 50% in 10 years, and 10 years later, we were exactly where we were before, but not completely, because what you see is that you have completely new group of crop protection solution that emerged, especially the biocontrol was really really increased a lot. And 13 or 14 years afterwards, this biocontrol sector was multiplied nearly by 3, and the most dangerous chemical completely disappeared. The CMR1, the very toxic one, have disappeared in France, and the CMR2 are really declining, which is a good thing. But so very often when you talk about crop protection, the second word is pesticide, and the third word is alternative to pesticide, which is a very, very bad way of thinking the story. Because pesticide has induced a tremendous impact on environments. There are many examples of that, but one of the most striking features is the first paper published by Caspar Ullmann in 2017, where they demonstrated in some so-called protected area in Germany that in 25 years they lost 75% of the biomass of insects. And this was due to many, many things, but a paper run a couple of years later by Francisco Sanchez Bayo, they analyzed all the possible reasons for that, and by using and running meta-analysis on the supplementary data from quite a lot of papers, they showed that there was a global impact of intensive agriculture, especially the upscaling the size of the fields. There was a direct effect on pesticide. Insects were less and less adapted to the environment, and this is where you start measuring the impact of climate change, even if the good news is that Donald Trump yesterday said it does not exist, so he will solve the issue. And the rest, what is also interesting is that there are many indirect effects that are due to land use changes. So, in fact, just saying biodiversity equal pesticide impact is not right. It's much more complex than that. This was the situation in so-called protected environment, and in Germany they carried on with that, and there was a paper published end of 23 by Wische from the GKI in Germany, and where they analyzed the herbal crop in northern Germany, and the situation is even getting worse and worse, because they measured that 95% of the insect biomass was lost. The only thing that is increasing is the aphids, so the herbivores that are increasing because there is no more regulation. So one of the consequences of the crop protection based on pesticide is the fact that the services provided by diversity are disappearing. Very difficult to measure that, but in terms of quality of the environment, and if you refer to my the parallel I made with the car, fields in good shape, certainly not. They are not in good shape because there is no biological regulation anymore. One more paper related to, there are many, but another example in terms of impact of biomass, showing that is not only the problem of pesticide, but more the overall problem of agriculture, is a synthesis done by Sirami in 2019, where they showed that if you measure not anymore the biomass of insect, but the regulation, so what they name the multitrophic diversity, in other words, the length of the food chain. And you have the aphids at the bottom, and you have all those that are relying on that. They showed that the diversity was determined by 3 elements of the landscape heterogeneity. One is crop diversity. We always think diversification, it's correct. Semi-natural cover, but one of the most surprising elements is the one that is here. They show that when the mean field size is getting over 3 hectares, the biological regulation is dropping down, and you cannot do anything about that. This is not at all compatible with the present agriculture we have, because it has been designed without thinking about that. But this is seen from an insect point of view. The insect doesn't matter about machinery and all these aspects. They have their own biology. And the reason is of that, for this very small field size, is based on the fact that most of the insect behavior is based on the perception of odors, of volatile organic compound. And if the fields are too large, they are not able to smell what is in the middle of the field, so they don't go there. And you lose the multi-trophic diversity, and you lose the regulation. And you can put all this perspective in a much more global perspective, that is the planetary boundaries. A lot of people are challenging this approach, but it has the main advantage to make the whole planet very simple. 9 components, 5 of those are related to agriculture and food. So all the 5 that are on this side. And you see how quickly the system is getting worse and worse, because when you are beyond this border, you are beyond the planetary boundaries. In 2015, there were a few that were where we were beyond the planetary boundaries. In 22, it's absolutely terrible. And all the 5 related to agriculture have been broken. And with 2 that are in very bad state, the nutrient cycles, and the second is biodiversity. And again, this is a question of what is the services provided by regulation. So just this is a French joke, and we had a parliament or a law proposed by the parliament named Duplon, and at the same time there was a law on how to handle the end of the life. And the joke is to say that the man is saying they are fighting for reintroducing forbidden pesticide, and the lady is saying, is this in the framework of helping people to die? It's very cynical. But anyway, for me, it's more a law leading to immobility. But in fact, one of the components of immobility that is very much related with the topic of the day is the fact that we are in a lock-in situation. A lock-in situation, the concept has been first developed by Gilles, who is now working at the University of Twente in Netherlands, saying that we are living in a system where everything is in stability and coherent with all the other people in the supply chain, in the society. And in that case, it's very difficult to move out, because if you move on your own, you lose your markets, you lose your providers, you lose your friends. So you stay where you are. And there are only two mechanisms in what he was saying to move out of that, is to have innovations, and innovation is always coming from niches of innovation, and you may change the socio-technical landscape. If you change the regulation, the so-called system in equilibrium is not in equilibrium anymore. If you withdraw a chemical, the system that is based on this chemical is simply going to disappear. And if you just think about the neonicotinoids in sugar beet, for instance, removing this, all the system more or less collapsed. And you can feel that the system is, those who are in this equilibrium are unhappy by the number of people who are claiming for something. And so these were the 2 elements provided by Gilles, and there are a few more that you can identify. You can set scenarios that are very different just to see how far you can move. But you can also set participatory approach, and VTREV is one example of that, because you just have new people coming in. I will come back to this because, in fact, we make a few assumptions about who is leading to this lock-in situation. And we tend to think about the farmers, the policymakers, the society, the providers, and the buyers. And I will get back to that at the very end of my talk to show that there are some more we do not talk about and who are very critical in that. If we want to move and to think crop protection, and again to seek insurance of crop protection, we have to be sure that we are dealing with the right paradigm. We are all working in the integrated pest management and so-called integrated pest management triangle. In theory, everything is based upon landscape management, and at the very end of the day, you use pesticide. In practice, we are just working like this. We start putting chemical pesticide, and we see what is left. And this system is absolutely unstable. for several reasons. The first one is that you have plenty of emergence of resistance. I will show you a figure later. There are many chemicals that are withdrawn, and in that case, if you are based on that, it doesn't work anymore. There are very, very few new molecules in the pipeline. At the European level, in 22 and 23, there has not been a single new molecule that has been approved. Nothing. And probably the worst is that there is no new mode of action that are discovered, simply because it is very, very difficult to kill one organism without impacting all the others. And this is why the number of mode of action are very, very limited. 26 in herbicide, a few more in insecticide, a few less in fungicide. So it's very, very difficult to deal with that. So if we try to move away from that, in fact, we can think in a different way. In fact, this triangle and the various principles of integrated pest management, in fact, you can plot them in two axes. One is the level of reconception. Either you look for efficiency or substitution or redesigning. And also there is a time scale. In fact, there are a few, and everything that is directly related with pesticide is very much in a tactical approach. You have a problem, you apply, that's it. But if you want to have a more biological regulation, for instance, or even if you want to apply a non-chemical method, you must anticipate. And this is really a question for insuring, but also for all the extension services. So we must consider these two things, more redesign, more anticipation. And we call this triangle in the way. But let's take all the pieces to take them away from each other. And again, the 8 principles of integrated pest management. In fact, there are those that are related with pesticide. You select the pesticide, and on the basis of that, at the European level, all the member states are saying, we apply integrated pest management. Of course, when you apply a pesticide, you must choose one. So it is applied, but it does not contribute to reduce the pesticide use. You may reduce the doses, and you have to take into account anti-strategy resistance. The alternative, the very often called alternative to pesticide, are the non-chemical pesticide, the non-chemical products, the biological products or physical barriers. Something that is very often forgotten, and Mark introduced that, you can do nothing. And if there is no pest pressure, you do nothing. It's very difficult it's very difficult for the farmers to take this into account. And in fact, you do this on the basis of the monitoring. That is the third principle of that. And the monitoring is based on thresholds. What is making the story very ambiguous is that you are dealing with 2 thresholds that are completely different. You are going to decide here on the basis of the biological threshold. If there is no pest pressure, which is a biological threshold, you have no intervention. If you have a very high one, you may go there. If you have an intermediate one where these methods that are not biocide, but that are regulating the population, they are going to be effective. This is the biological threshold. But when you discuss with the farmers, and this is very much related with the insurance issue, they will talk about economical threshold. Do I take an economic risk that I cannot cope with? And we must combine these two. You decide, and this is a very, very poor element of the story. If you have a decision based with a decision support system, it must be based on the monitoring. Very often it is based on modeling, which is not exactly the same, because the modeling has a lot of difficulty to take into account your own situation. So we need more monitoring, and this is really, really the poor member of the family. You may reduce that by a lot of prevention and prophylaxis, and the prophylaxis must be very active. Today, if you analyze how all the crop protection is handled, this is hardly visible. And the prophylaxis So you are, for those who are in vineyard, it's difficult to talk about rotation, but for those who are dealing with annual crops or rapeseed, they are in rotation. And when you talk about that and this IPM, and I'm involved in a project with the European Commission, they said, yes, of course, everyone is doing a rotation. But who is building the rotation to reduce the pest pressure? Nobody. Because the rotation is based, again, on an economical threshold and not on a biological issue. Again, there is no need to oppose them, but how we can combine those? And when we run, again, for this European project I just quoted, we run a taxonomy analysis of everything that could enter that. And you see that in the principle one, in fact, there is a tremendous load of possibility that are not so much used by the farmers. And at the end of the day, of course, you evaluate all that, and the evaluation will help you to define the best prevention for the next crop or the next cycle. Yeah, one of the points that is very important and that leads to the question of insurance is that all that has a dependency to local condition. So it is context dependent. And the context dependency, and this leads to your point, Mark is going to say, at least he's going to talk about something connected with the subject of the day. In fact, what are the risks related with that are, to some extent, context dependent? There is a risk inherent to learning. When you have to move away from a situation where you are using pesticide and trying to base more thing on prophylaxis and prevention, wow, you must be trained, you must have the right extension services to do that. And the extension is, they must be really in trust with the farmers, otherwise they will lose their job. So there is a key question for training and advice, and there is, as I mentioned, a risk that is inherent to context dependency. We have the variation of climate among years. Again, the illustration given by Mark is wonderful. And there are biotic pressure that is changing, but we also have in the long run a real question of emergence of resistance. And so this is an illustration of the various elements of the context that are leading context dependency. When we talk about economic elements, we just cover one side of the coin. We cover production cost and what we yield, and that's it. You look for the right balance, and then you pay your tax if you get enough money. In fact, there are many, many hidden costs that are related to crop protection. I'm just going to document that. I will not give the final figure. But if you start thinking about the hidden costs, you realize very quickly that there are plenty of degrees of freedom that makes it possible to work in a different way and think in a different way. I will talk about water, biodiversity, human health, and a few others. And I'm probably going to be short of time. Impact on water quality. There are very, very few reports trying to measure the cost of that. There is one for France, one report from 2011, run by services of the Ministry of Environment, so people who are very, very good. And in fact, in 2011, the cost, so for 1 year of cleaning the water, so making the water drinkable, and to remove the impact of agriculture was 51 billion euro. The total turnover of the French farm, all the agricultural production, is only in 2024, 84 billion. So you see the tremendous impact due to the activity of agriculture. And in this report, you find something that is very, very surprising. If you are cleaning the water, it's because you have to remove pieces, you have to remove elements. So they calculated the cost of removing 1 kilogram of pesticide or 1 kilogram of residue of pesticide. And on average, the cost is 60,000 euro. If you compare this to the cost of pesticide, is nothing comparable. I would prefer to buy the biocontrol product. They will cost probably a little bit more, but be much more easy to remove. And in another report run by Xavier Rebout and published in 2022, where they were analyzing what would be the alternative to S-metolachlor, In fact, the S-metolachlor, but mainly its residue, were present in, you see, the 14% of the, in excess, so beyond the limits, in 14% of the water that was pumped to be treated. So it means that a huge amount have to be treated, and this explains the tremendous cost. Second is on biodiversity. There are very, very few actions of restoration of biodiversity, so you have no hidden cost for that. But you may estimate indirectly the incidence by the losses of economic services, especially the pollination services. So the hidden cost is what you have to do to balance that. There is not a lot of example, but one interesting example has been published by, from the US and published on the 1st of September this year. I've been very fortunate that this meeting did not take place in August. There is one example of the honeybees hive that has to be provided in California to ensure the pollination in the orchards. For the orchards of production of almond, California is by far the largest area of almond producers. They documented in the US that the honeybees are really meeting tremendous difficulties. At the national level, it's 55% of the honeybees the colonies that died in a single year, which is very high. And the reason is direct effect of pesticide, which is very limited, but the main effect is the varroa, this varroa destructor, not because it is there, but because it has become completely resistant to every product that can be used to control it. So you have, in fact, a second step impact. And the economic incidence for the only California and the only almond orchard in California is that they have to provide 2 million hives a year. And it's not yet enough. They consider that they should have been at 2.5, but not enough. And as a consequence of that, the lack of pollination, due to the lack of pollination, is nearly $500 million that is lost. And this is a direct impact, not of pesticide only, but of this acaricide. And so the biodiversity has a value. And you can have plenty of examples of that. For instance, what we lose as an impact of herbicide on the soil algae. One herbicide in cereal crops, that is diflufenacanyl, is killing the green algae that are in all the soil. And it is, on average, 40 kilograms of nitrogen a year. So all this is as an impact on biodiversity. And the last one is human health. Very, very difficult to figure out the impact on human health, because at the end of the day, it means that you have to calculate the value of one human health. Jan has a tremendous value, I know, but some others have much lower. But on average, how do you figure this out? And so it's very, very complex. But the impacts are disease and cancer, and these are very well documented. Infertility, which is really leading to many, many problems, because you have to analyze that. There are very, very few consolidated data. You mainly have case studies. There are only two that are available in France. The Agrican cohort, and when you read if you just read the summary, you conclude everything is going well. When you read in detail, you say, wow, there are many things that are completely wrong, simply because it is done by medical people that do not know anything about agriculture. And if you go into detail, you say nothing is going very well. And I recommend you to read the work of Sylvain Chameau, who is a professor at the Hospital of Amiens, and he's working on pediatry and cancer. It's very sad when you discuss with him. You just have terrible situations. And all the situations he's dealing with are related with pesticide. So out of that, there is a quick, very, very urgent need to withdraw the active substances that have a very tremendous impact. So the CMR1, CMR2, and the endocrine disruptor. If I was nominated as Minister of Agriculture, I will never be that. I would remove that the next day, because it is the red line, and we are not allowed to get across that. It's not for us, it's not for the next generation. And there is a clear challenge to make Europe healthy again. And in fact, if you analyze all the chemicals, it's not all, these are just a list of herbicides, regarding their impact on human health, on ecotoxicity, and how they are disseminated into the environment, you may quote that in green when there is no risk, orange or red, and you see that they are not all the same. What is interesting, in France, we are paying a tax on the pesticide, and that is a redevance pour pollution diffuse. And in fact, they are not, the level is here on the right, and it's not related with the toxicity. And so you hardly understand why how this has been established. And in all cases, in fact, these values are nothing related with the cost of treatment and the cost of the impact. So there is a need to change. One extra reason for changing is the rate of emergence of resistance. This has an agronomic cost. And if this is the example for herbicide, and it's weedscience.org is doing this in a regular time, and this is the picture I took in 2021, but you have, I should have made it for 2024. But you see that it is emerging very, very quickly, and for this class 2, you have 150 species that are completely tolerant. So it means that the efficiency is getting down and down. And it's exactly the same as withdrawing an active substance. If it is not working, you have a problem. But you could say, and you should say, so we will say, that when we remove one chemical, in fact, we increase the rate of emergence of resistance. So it's a kind of catch-22 we cannot solve. So the consequence of these elements, and I think this is my last slide, in fact, the economic analysis, including the insurance aspect, so the economic analysis of crop protection and not economic analysis of pesticide use. So economic analysis of crop protection must go beyond the only approach of production cost. The hidden costs are huge, but not consolidated, so they must be part of the situation. If we reduce the hidden costs, we have room for maneuver for new support to the farmers. So instead of paying more for water quality, I would prefer to support farmers. The transition period is very, very delicate because at the same time we have to pay and to support the farmers to move to a new way of protecting the crop, and at the same time the hidden cost will not disappear the next day, so we will have to pay for that. And the last point is the fact that when you analyze the lock-in situation I mentioned, there is a need to include the economic stakeholders who are interested in the hidden cost. So all the companies that are supplying the water, they are all very, very large companies. You never hear them in any point related to crop protection. Pharmaceutical industry is exactly the same. And for instance, I'm not going to make the promotion, but you take Bayer on one side, they are selling pesticide, and on the other side, they are selling pharmaceutical to cure people. There is a problem somewhere there. So this is what I wanted to say, and I thank you for your attention. I'm late.
I don't know if there are maybe short question. Otherwise.